While often overlooked compared to its American cousins, the Eurocopter Tiger is a highly advanced aircraft and the first all-composite helicopter developed in Europe. Designed as a cooperation between Germany and France as an anti-tank platform in case of a Soviet ground invasion of Europe, the helicopter's prolonged development time would see the Union collapse before it was finished, but the two nations kept going anyway, pivoting the craft to a multi-role mission instead. The Tiger came out the gate with many advanced technologies like glass cockpits and stealth technologies, as well as being able to fit a wide variety of weapons, making it a formidable rival to the much more famous Apache. The Tiger has seen limited export success with Spain and Australia, but less than 200 of them have been made in total, so the craft still remains quite rare. Like all good builds, we start with the cockpit. I cut out the parts and clean them up with my file before spraying them in black. I then paint in some details with my paintbrush and apply decals before gluing in the other parts with superglue. With the cockpit done, I could assemble a helicopter. I mostly fully assemble it at this point, including gluing on the canopy, although I did leave the weapon pods and rotors off as it would make painting easier. I use a mix of thick and thin glue for this, swapping as needed, and use clamps where appropriate. The final stage before painting was to fill and correct gaps. I spray a layer of primer over the model, unifying it and providing a good base for paints. Then, I fill the gaps I could find using acrylic putty, left it to dry for 24 hours, and then sand it flat with files and sandpaper. Once this was done, I use a razor saw to fix any panel lines that had been damaged by this process, and then clean with some kitchen roll. Finally, I spray another layer of primer over the sections I had worked on, making sure that I had corrected it, and also to ensure that the paint would have an even base to stick to. Now that was all done, it was time to paint the camouflage. While the instructions call for a 3-tone green scheme, all pictures and documentation I could find said that the scheme should be olive green, forest green, and black, so I chose to do that instead. I didn't have the exact olive green shade I actually needed, so I mixed it myself, using some AK and Vallejo paints as they're compositionally very similar. Once the camo was sprayed, I painted in some smaller details and then spray gloss varnish over the whole model and provide a base for decals. Next, I could apply the decals and stencils. I cut them from the sheet with scissors and moistened the backing film in hot water before transferring them to the model and using some decal solution to dissolve the clear layer. Once I had applied all of them, I spray another layer of varnish to seal them all in. I then apply an all-over wash of diluted black oil paint to accentuate panel lines and provide some weathering. I wanted to keep the heli quite clean overall, as German vehicles are not typically deployed overseas and are often fresh from maintenance. After allowing this to dry for a few hours, I wipe off the excess with a sponge moistened in thinner. I then glue on the missing parts, like the weapon pod and main rotor, and give the model a coat of matte varnish to seal in the result and dull down the shine of the earlier gloss layers. The last stage was actually some scratch building. In all the photo documentation of this specific tiger I could find, it had a very obvious white handrail running along the back half of its left side, so I wanted to replicate this. I used a length of copper wire that I had sprayed some white spray paint, cutting and shaping it as close to the needed shape as I could get, before attaching it at the correct points using some more wire that had been painted in black. Once this was attached, the model was done.